So, could you just start off by telling me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Bruce Hufnagel. I am married with one child, a daughter. I work in a chemical plant in the
Mm-hmm.
north of the Pittsburgh area. I have a farm that used to be part of my wife's family that we purchased probably about 25 years ago, and we also have a little house on the river nearby. I like to do
Okay.
boating and stuff.
Nearby your farm.
Yes, and,
Okay.
avid hunter, fisherman. Like being outdoors.
Okay. So, what brings you in to see me today?
Alcohol problem, drinking. I've had a couple DUIs.
Mm-hmm.
It's caused me some problems legally. Um, Caused me to have license suspensions, and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Drinking also tends to stress the relationship between my wife and myself. Um, Arguments, verbal, never anything, physical or crazy like that, but, words can get pretty heated.
Mm-hmm.
And then my relationship with my daughter has been on a steady decline as she's gotten older. She's getting ready to go away to school, and, as she's getting older, our relationship has gone downhill because she's doesn't put up with my drinking or doesn't, now she notices it more than she did when she was a kid, I guess is a good way to put it. And it's getting to the point where our relationship is almost non-existent. And,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that.
How many DUIs did you say you had?
I've had two official DUIs. One just about 2 years ago, and the other was several years before that. But over my lifetime, I've had a lot of close calls where I've bumped into someone's mailbox with my car, or a little fender bender, or been pulled over and have been let go or been cut a break here or there, by a state trooper, or maybe I know somebody that helps
Okay.
me out. But two DUIs.
Okay. What did that feel like getting those DUIs?
I don't know. I guess the first one was more embarrassing than anything,
Mhm.
just kind of getting caught. Because lots of people have drinks and drive home,
Right.
but so I didn't consider it that big of a deal. I kind of paid off my fine and went about my business. But the second one was a lot more of an embarrassing, situation, and caused more problems within my family because of how that all played out.
What kind of problems?
Well, my second DUI was actually caused. My daughter had a car accident,
Okay.
and I had been drinking at the farm. I said I had, and I had to go to the accident scene. And I got there. My wife was already there. She went in a separate car. We weren't in the same place. And when I arrived on scene, I was pretty drunk, and the police were already there. And I got out and kind of lost my temper, lost control, slammed a car door, swore a lot, and all of a sudden the police are a lot more concerned with my actions than what the accident was, because here I am driving to the scene drunk. So that's how that
Okay.
started. So that caused a lot more problems. Caused me to go through a license suspension. Which obviously makes it hard keeping up with my property, or keeping up with family, going to work, things like that.
How much would you say that you drink?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
How much would you say that you drink?
Oh, more than I guess most people I loaf around with. It's almost daily, I guess, at least when I'm not at work. So I would say normally if I'm sitting around working on something around the house or the farm, probably 10 to 12 beers, is probably a good number. I don't really know, but I know, cases of beer don't last too long around my house, even if I'm just by myself.
Okay. Does your wife drink?
Not more than socially. I mean, if we're at a birthday party or a wedding or something, sure, she'll have the kind of drinks that most people would have a good evening or a toast or whatever. She's not really the type to get drunk or anything, but so strictly socially, and definitely not an everyday drinker.
Right.
I mean, that's just not what she does, which again, because I am drinking every day, causes us to, fight a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard you say that before, that your drinking you think has caused some strain with your wife and your daughter. Could you tell me a little bit more about your relationship? Let's just start with your wife.
My wife Diane and I have probably been married just about 30 years now. We were introduced by my godson when he was just a little squirt. Walked across the street, introduced me to the neighbor, who I already knew, but she was a friend of the a friend of mine's sister, so friend of the family, and started dating, lived together for probably about 10 years, give or take, off and on. Mostly on, we had a small house, bought a different place, but, then we eventually got married.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was pretty good. I mean, I would drink then, but, not at the level that I do now. Because of my drinking, I tend to fly off the handle a little bit, maybe not listen to what she has to say or necessarily even care sometimes. Never anything physical. That's just not something that I would do, but definitely verbal. Sometimes it can get pretty aggressive, insulting, personal, maybe even. But, a lot of verbal altercations.
Did she drink more when you guys were first married? Did she drink along with you?
No, it was about the same, where it was, strictly, maybe at a social event she would have a couple.
Okay.
But her alcohol use, or I guess lack thereof, her habits have pretty much been the same our whole lives together.
When did it start becoming an issue, do you think, with her? You said when you were younger you guys first got married, you drank.
Well, when we first got married, we lived closer to the Pittsburgh area. Like I mentioned, we had a couple homes. And then we moved up north. Her family had a farm, and the people who lived on that farm had passed away. It came up for sale. We purchased the farm, both being outdoorsy type people. That was perfect for us. Lots of land, peace and quiet, acreage, hunting, fishing, all the things we loved. And, kind of being up there, I don't know, I guess I just found myself drinking more as I was doing activities, whether it was alone or with other people. So, and then my daughter was born shortly thereafter. So I guess probably, not long after we moved, up onto our property, that my drinking probably increased.
Okay, so your drinking has increased in your marriage?
Since we first started dating and got married, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so would you say it started causing an issue after the birth of your daughter?
There were, problems before, but yes, after the birth of our daughter, it didn't really, slow me down. I just kept doing my own thing, and I didn't think it was that big a deal just to, have a beer while I'm working on a truck or a tractor or fixing something at the barn or with the animals. It's just the way I've always done things. You're working with one hand, you have a beer or a cigarette in the other.
Right. What about your relationship with your daughter? You said it's also caused some issues between the two of you. How old is she?
She's currently 19.
Okay.
It has. When she was growing up, she was definitely a daddy's girl. Everything was daddy, daddy, daddy. Even to the point where I'm sure it bothered her mother, being, a little girl. She probably, my wife being into all the outdoorsy stuff, I guess, is more of a tomboy. But still, what woman wouldn't want her little girl to, be by her side? Right. So my daughter was always a daddy's girl. So, I loved the attention of that, having my little sidekick, my little helper, always by my side. And when she was younger and I would drink, she would either be unaware or maybe find it silly or something like that. But as she got older, she would become more of aware of the arguments I would have with my wife. Or, maybe she would pick up on, hey, where'd daddy's truck go? Because, I smashed into something, or it needs to be repaired, or something along those lines. And now that, she got into kind of her adulthood through high school, and I'm telling her not to go out and party or do this and that. And, she obviously has a lot of things to say back. I mean, she sees
Right.
me drinking, so our relationship became more and more stressed. And, now that she's become an adult, she's much more willing to speak her mind and, tell me what she thinks of, my drinking and not wanting to be around it.
Right.
And now that she is leaving slash, kind of left the home to go to school, I feel us getting, further apart. We don't talk as much. I mean, I put her through school. I mean, everything's paid for, cars, school, whatever. And unless she needs something, I don't really hear too much from her. And when I do hear from her, we usually end up in some kind of, again, verbal fight.
So it sounds like you're telling me a lot of the fights, a lot of stresses are a direct result of your drinking. Is that correct?
I guess direct, indirect. I mean, I'm not 100%. I don't know on that.
Okay.
But usually, like I mentioned with my wife, if I'm drinking, I don't really have the patience to hear someone else's side. I'm doing my thing.
Right.
If someone interrupts or trying to get my attention, I probably don't react the way I should. I have very little patience for that, or sometimes maybe I don't react. So yeah, the drinking's probably caused a lot of the arguments, I would have to say.
Okay.
And then as it continues on, I mean, it's almost like people expect me to react a certain way, or that argument's going to happen. And
right.
if they're ready for it and I've had a few beers, I'm going to fire back with an argument.
Okay. So have you ever tried to quit drinking in the past?
Not really by myself. I mean, after that second DUI, I think I said, I was encouraged strongly by the court to try to make some changes or, risk possible jail time. It could affect, my job working in the chemical plant if I can't keep certain clearances or I'm not safe on the job.
Right.
I could hurt myself, hurt others. I mean, in a chemical plant, you make too many mistakes. I mean, I could potentially blow up the plant, maybe take out the whole town. I mean, it's that kind of job.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, but as far as trying to stop, no, I've never really tried to stop. But I mean, I took a little time off after the second DUI. I guess it probably.
What do you mean by time off?
Well, I mean, I tried cold turkey just to quit drinking. Probably got to about, I don't know, maybe about 6 months, give or take, I guess. Okay. But, I mean, it's tough. I mean, all the guys I loaf around with from work or the neighbors, I mean, they're all beer drinkers. I mean, I've never been a liquor guy. I mean, I never really was into drugs. I mean, sure, as a teenager, my 20-something, I smoke a joint, snort a line of coke, whatever, Okay. But, we're just beer drinkers. When I grew up, my dad drank beer, and all my brothers, I'm the youngest, all my brothers, were beer drinkers. So if I'm around family, I'm around friends, there's beer present,
Right.
So, after a while, and, they supported me taking a break, but it was just hard when it's always there that, eventually, I try to have a couple, but that didn't last. I mean, I went straight from having, a beer or two to 6 to 10 to I'm back to the way, I was drinking before I got caught.
Yeah, it sounds really hard to quit drinking when you're surrounded by a lot of drinkers.
Yeah.
Was your father or your mother a drinker? Did they drink around you?
My dad, definitely had beers, occasional highball, a little whiskey here and there, but, not to the point of, the level that I drink. My mother might have one drink, when family was around, but never anything like that. So I guess, it was just me growing up, my brothers, my friends, it's just the way I grew up. It's just beer was, just alcohol was always part of having a good time, letting loose, whatever you want to call it.
So you're here today because you have some issues drinking. It's causing a lot of issues between your daughter and you and your wife and you. And you've never really tried to quit in the past, so why now? Can you give me a couple of reasons why now is the time for you to stop drinking?
I mean, I'm getting older.
Okay.
When I was a younger man, I was in much, better shape, better health. I do notice things, changes in my own body, more aches and pains. I've had problems with my teeth. I've had a few accidents here and there. I can't necessarily say they were caused by alcohol. I mean, some of them alcohol wasn't present, but, you beat up on your body enough, your body starts, fighting back. So, my health to some level, has kind of, let me down a little bit. My wife has threatened once or twice, to leave because she can't take the drinking because it's constant. We talked about how my relationship with my daughter has kind of gone down the toilet in recent years, especially compared to what it was when she was a little girl. I have a lot to lose. I have 2 really nice pieces of property. I have a good family, and I have a pretty good job that not a lot of people can get. It's just, I don't know. I guess it's just getting to the point where if I don't do something, slow down, quit, whatever, that, one of these times I'm not going to be so lucky, I guess. And, pull through.
Well, you sound very aware of what's happening, so I think that's a very good thing. But I do have a question about your job. You said you've been able to provide your daughter. You've mentioned your job a couple times. Has drinking ever impacted your job?
Having, license restrictions and such, it does make it difficult to get to work, get home from work in those kind of situations. I've never had a problem with alcohol on the job. It just can't happen there. There's just too many problems. But if it were to continue and I were to have my license permanently revoked, I could lose security clearances, which would pull me out of those chemical plants, and that's all I've ever done since I got out of high school. I wouldn't know how else. I wouldn't know what other job to go for, I guess. So, alcohol hasn't been too much of a problem with work. I would say it's mostly on the personal side of my life.
Okay. When do you start drinking? In the mornings? In the
I don't know, like
afternoons?
middle of my day. I don't have a typical schedule. I work a swing shift, so 1 week or sometimes it changes, but it might be a couple weeks in a row where I'm a midnight guy or I'm a daylight or I'm working night turn. So, we have rotating shifts. So usually, whatever's lunchtime for me is the middle of my day. I'm up and about. I'm, fairly active up around my property. So I'm working on something and I'm just always used to, having that drink. Having a beer or a cigarette when I'm, working on something. It's just the way I've always done it, the way I grew up.
So